Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Kleffler in New York. And as the financial markets are entering the final hour of trading for Friday, December 5th, this is Story Stock. Starbucks, the world's biggest coffee shop operator, is managing to raise its eyebrows even higher. Opening its Starbucks Reserve Roastery and Tasting Room today in Seattle. This is what it is. 15,000 square feet. It's a concept space, part store, part roastery, all coffee. And it's part of a new retail line for the company, which will then offer some special limited batch coffee brews and some coffee beans. In fact, some will cost $20 a pound. So what do investors have to say about all that? I want to bring in Steve Cortez of Veracruz LLC. Steve, thanks for being with us today. So,
thanks for having me, Dan.
So listen, Starbucks has been playing around a little bit with some store concepts for a while now. Why go to this extreme?
Well, no, I think Starbucks has been an incredibly innovative company, and I'm a little skeptical on the consumer stocks as a whole, but I'm not at all skeptical on this one. And by the way, I think you had the right guy on today. My name is Cortez. My father's from Colombia, so if you want to talk coffee, hopefully you have the right person. It's in my genes, in my blood, to talk about coffee. And I am, by the way, a manic customer of Starbucks. I'm there at least once a day, so I like it both as a consumer, but I also like it as an investor. And what Starbucks has done that has been very smart is, I think for the most part, the U.S. market at least is pretty saturated. There's not a ton of room for them to grow with their standard stores. So where's the growth going to come from? From here, it's going to come internationally, and then domestically, it's going to come from new concepts. And so they've been very smart and very strategic about trying these new concepts. And it's not just this higher-end coffee. That is part of it, and I think it's exciting, but they're doing other things. The Starbucks in my neighborhood, for instance, at night now serves tapas and cocktails, wine and beer. So they're trying ways to make sure that their revenue stream can continue throughout the day, that it's not just a morning experience. And Starbucks, this is an incredibly well-run company. Howard Schultz has done a magnificent job of driving this stock to all-time highs just today. And, I would say this, too, another big tailwind for the company, another thing that's going to support the efforts of this company is the fact that coffee prices have been plummeting of late. A lot of commodity prices have been going down hard. Everybody, it seems, knows about gasoline, about crude oil heading lower, but coffee over the last 2 months is down over 20%. So that's a big help to Starbucks because they aren't passing that along to consumers. They're still charging just as much for your fancy Starbucks drink, but their input costs in terms of the coffee prices are going down. So it's bad news for Juan Valdez, but it's great news for Starbucks.
Well, and it is interesting to think, if you think back, 15, 20 years when everyone was thinking premium coffee, why would that ever take off any place other than Italy? In fact, it is here and here clearly to stay. Talk to me about the mobile space that Starbucks has been exploring.
Yeah, this is an incredibly innovative company in so many ways. It's interesting because, at its heart, as you sort of alluded to, it's just a beverage company, right? But it's much more than that. They're very high tech. And in terms of what they've done, for instance, in payment processing, Starbucks was one of the first to really get high tech there and to allow people to pay with their phones. They were at the forefront of that before credit card companies and banks were really even necessarily at the forefront of it. And same kinds of things are going on in mobile. And in terms of delivery, I don't think it's all that far into the future that Starbucks stores are going to be, and they've already been testing this a bit, that they're going to be very automated. They won't have nearly as many baristas as they do now in terms of delivery, possible partnerships with Uber, that sort of thing, of ordering your Starbucks and getting it right to your home or office. So, again, this is an incredibly innovative company. Doesn't mean here at all-time highs that I want to pile in and buy a lot of it at these prices, but it does mean, at least to me, that this is a company with a really sustainable long-term growth story.
You brought up Howard Schultz there, the CEO. He came back to head the company after being gone for a couple of years there. The stock's been on a roll ever since there. What makes his management style so unique, in fact, that investors gravitate towards him?
Right. This man, I think, you get these visionary characters every so often, visionary leaders, and I think he is one of them. I mean, I think he's of the category of a Steve Jobs or a Jeff Bezos. All these guys seem to be West Coast, by the way. There must be something to the Pacific that can produce these kind of leaders. But anyway, I really feel that Howard Schultz is one of those kinds of leaders. And I think he shows it not just in his everyday management of the coffee company, but for instance, we just passed Veterans Day, the kinds of things that Starbucks was doing for veterans, the inspirational programming that he ran on HBO, the book he co-wrote. This is a guy who just seems to operate at a different level. He plays the game at a different speed. He's a Michael Jordan of management. And so I think you generally want to bet on those those types of guys. Again, a Steve Jobs, a Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk. I think he's in that category of these kind of inspirational, motivational leaders who, by the way, monetizes it. Starbucks is a terrifically successful company. Its investors have done wonderfully well. And unlike a lot of high growth companies, by the way, it's very profitable. It pays a dividend. It makes profit. So this isn't pie in the sky that we're betting on the next technology and we're taking a leap of faith like you have to on some of those other high growth companies. Starbucks, the financials are very solid. Now, having said all that, again, it's not cheap. It's at all-time highs. You're paying a high price to earnings ratio here for the company. So I'm not saying pile in at these prices, but I do think the company's future is very bright.
Well, as far as the overall structure, and again, kind of going back to Schultz's management style as well, his forthright and honesty in the fact that saying that some of the traffic at some of his standalone stores and even some of the mall stores has been on the decline. As you pointed out, they've been venturing into some other areas, including online sales. Is that enough to offset that?
I think so. And look, I'll be honest, I don't know for certain, and I don't think they know for certain, right? But they know enough to know that they need to tinker, that they can't rest and be comfortable with just their current model. Their current model has been incredibly successful, and it's the base to build the next leg up. But I'm confident that this management team, and it's not just Schultz, but all the folks he has around him and the track record they have there and the attitude, the culture that permeates the company, I'm confident that it will be enough to figure out whatever that next angle is. Is it sort of finer dining almost and wine and beer at night? Is it the higher end coffee? Is it a combination of both of those? Is it online sales? Is it all of the above? I think they'll figure it out. And one thing I would tell folks is that it amazes me about Starbucks compared to other fast service places, whether it's beverages or food. There is clearly a culture that is different when you walk into those to Starbucks establishments. The helpfulness, the cheerfulness of its employees, it's really incredible and impressive to see. And that's not, by the way, from a workforce that's necessarily all that highly paid. So I think it's even more impressive that they're able to inculcate that kind of an attitude and that they have a corporate culture that really works. And I think it works from the top down. And again, it's not worked just for the consumer side of it, which I love, but it's also worked for the investor side.
Well-informed, well-caffeinated Steve Cortez from Veracruz LLC. Steve, thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Of course, you've been watching Story Stock. You can stay with abcnews.com for your latest headlines. I'm Dan Kleffler in New York.